Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter. I am joined as always by Tara.
Greetings, citizens.
This is a science fiction movie podcast. We talk about sci-fi movies every week. We get together, watch a movie, and we talk about it. It's that simple. And about a month or so ago, we went back and we watched and discussed the first Matrix film. Why? Because, well, there's a new one coming out at the end of the year, so it made sense that we have to get through the original trilogy. So we are here today to talk about The Matrix Reloaded, which came out in 2003, as did the next one as well, actually. They both came out in 2003. They were kind of it was like summer and then like November time, I think, for the third one. So we're going to talk about Matrix Reloaded. I have not seen this prior to today in about 15 years. And my memory of it was not that positive, so I was very curious to get into this. When was the last time you saw this before this?
I probably watched it outside of the theaters, but I just remember going to the theater quite a few times to see it. I was also working in a movie theater at the time, so I could go for free.
You went multiple times. That's interesting. Even for free.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Teenage Tara, questionable taste.
Yeah. Late teens.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. How do you follow up basically a masterpiece? Like, how do you follow?
10 out of 10.
How do you follow up a 9.5 out of 10 film like The Matrix? It's difficult. So, I mean, I'll just say spoiler warning. I think, it's an older movie. It's also a sequel. I feel like anyone who cares about our opinion on Matrix Reloaded is not worried about the spoilers for Matrix Reloaded. Although I think we will stay away from talking about anything we remember from Revolutions.
That will be easy because I actually don't really remember anything from that movie.
That is fair. That works out in our favor then. Works out in the audience's favor. Just in case someone's watching the trilogy for the first time and watching our discussions after they've seen the movie, they've not watched the third one yet.
I definitely remember the feeling I had after watching that movie, but I don't remember the movie.
Yes. Well, what's funny is I'm and I'm not just saying this to prod at you, but I'm a little bit younger than you, just a little bit, but a little bit now means nothing, right? We feel that we're the same age group. In 2003, that little bit was a more of a gap in the sense that you're in your late teens, I was in my early teens, and yeah, 14's early. So I think what's interesting about my perspective is that I don't think I necessarily disliked the sequels immediately because I don't think I was smart enough to realize that they sucked at the time. I think I convinced myself that they were all right because of a couple of good action scenes or something. And I discovered that watching them a few years later, probably the age you were when you first saw them, that these are kind of dull and sucky or whatever, right? I don't remember my exact thoughts. I just remember a general feeling, as you say. There's a feeling.
Right.
Time has passed. So I was very curious to see if we were going to find things to like in this film now, how it had aged, if the stuff that I remember being bad was still bad, if anything I did remember liking was still good, and if I would discover it, especially since, we watched the first film again and we sat and we talked about it really in depth. We went over 2 hours. We looked at it through all the themes of the science fiction, some more, not recent themes, but themes that we recently were made more aware of by the directors. Yeah, we had new lenses, all these things. I literally just got new glasses in January, so they are relatively still new lenses, literally. So
You jerk.
Well, just cracking a little joke. So, yes. So I was very curious. I was very curious to see how I felt about Matrix Reloaded. And this film is even worse than I remember it. How do you feel?
Yeah, I'm mixed on it. There's a lot of things I really like in it. I think I'm going to be more positive than you because I did see it multiple times in the theater because I was really into it when it came out. I thought there were just little things about it that I knew were wrong. Like, I don't like this. But, a lot of the major set pieces are very cool. A lot of the fighting is very cool. The CGI is very not cool in this. Like, somehow, even though it's 4 years later, it got worse for this film. I think because they try to, one up things. I think the directors were a bit more confident, but I think in this one, because it's shot differently, it looks differently, it looks more like a Hollywood film, but I don't think the confidence is warranted. I think it's just not as tight of a script. I know I know
tight.
it is.
That is the most generous way you could phrase that.
Well,
It's
I
not
know
as
it
tight. It's hot trash.
Okay, hold on. Hold on.
Okay, all right.
I know that it's a two-parter and we only have half. So that is working against it, you know? So I don't have all of my answers because I don't remember what the answers are for that we'll get in the third movie. So, you know, I'm going to wait and see how I really feel about it. But I remember one thing I do remember from the third film is how I felt after I watched it, which made me not like this one as much. But now I don't remember what the answers are, so I don't hate it. I really don't. I don't hate it. I do still sort of hate that it exists because I love The Matrix on its own, because once you add sequels into it, it changes the messages from the first film. And now we just have a Superman, like it's a Superman movie.
Where did I begin?
With a bunch of ravers.
There's so many things you said there. I've got entire like sections on to develop to devote time to in this.
I mean, we'll just break it down one at a time.
I do kind of hate this movie, and I kind of felt bad within the first 30 seconds. Like the very first thing you see in this movie is it's actually a scene from like towards the end of the movie because Neo's dreaming about it in advance, but immediately there was these like red flags I was having. Somehow like everyone who's not a main character in this is not a good actor. I don't know how they achieved this, but there's a moment at the start where it's Trinity comes in the bike and she like we do the slow motion flying off and the bike lands in the building and explodes and she does the pose and it's all very Matrixy. And it cuts to like the security guard who's getting into his car and the camera sort of tracks in really quickly to his face and he's like, oh my god, that's not possible. And I'm like,
yeah,
this is just a worse version of the opening scene from the first movie. I mean, we're even starting in the same way where it's Trinity versus an agent. It's Trinity trying to get away from an agent. And then we get in that visual effect of her jumping out the window and spinning around with the guns and like firing upwards. It looks horrible. And so I guess the first point I'll address of what you said from your list, which was the CG not being good, and to an extent the directing and the overconfidence is like, obviously there's all these horror stories about studios and stuff interfering with movies and it ruining directors' visions and it comes out with this corporate mess as a result, and those are very warranted stories in a lot of cases. But this streams to me as an example of these directors were better when they were restrained in some way, when there was guidelines. I don't know if there was maybe like someone like helping them out, like a producer who was like more hands-on in the first film. But everything about this, it's very Star Wars prequels. It's no one was telling them no. No one was saying this is bad or this is a stupid idea. It reeks of self-indulgence in all of the worst possible ways. And the first thing I thought is, this looks terrible. The effect looks terrible because they're using all this CG to accomplish more over-the-top bullet time style moments. Mm-hmm. But on top of that, like this, and then a lot of moments as the movie went on, I was just like, and I kind of remembered feeling this, and I feel it, like I know I feel it now watching it again, is that this doesn't feel like a movie made by the same people that made the first film. This feels like a fan fiction movie made by people who loved the first film and feel the need to copy and reference the first film as often as humanly possible, because it's all about recreating the moments that the first film made you feel in the action or in the style, and even in the music where the little flares will like come up in the soundtrack. And every time it came up, all I could think was, this has no purpose in this movie other than to make me think this is cool because it's doing Matrixy things again. One of the things we said when we watched the first movie is that every single scene we had, like, there was so much depth in every scene that was building the character of Neo, it was building the story, the character journey of that film and what the messages of the film were. And it's there layered within every scene. Every scene felt like it had such a purpose. And there's so many action scenes, especially in this movie, that just feel like they're there to have an action scene. And it was really starting to piss me off. And so instead of action scenes feeling tense, like there's weight to them, like there's danger to them, they don't for the most part. with one or two notable exceptions, and as a result, they have no impact. I don't feel anything from them, and they don't feel like they're driving the story forward, which is kind of 101 like big budget action movie complaint is when the script just doesn't. It's just there for an action movie scene, right? That's all it is. And on top of that, all of the actual plot of the movie, which we'll get into as we go through it, almost all of it, like the first film was so smart in the way it progressed its story with Neo becoming the one, coming out of the Matrix, learning what he learns, and it's all about his journey of like sort of essentially believing in himself, right? There's a core story to it, and everything drives to that goal, that point. This movie is nothing but let's come up with a MacGuffin that we have to get to. Let's come up with a person that we have to get to, and that will magically lead to the ultimate like location or destination that we have to go to that might solve the conflict that's going on right now. It's nothing but a series of MacGuffins and people are MacGuffins. That's all it is the entire time. It's like the bare minimum of screenwriting in terms of like how it works. So all you really have is a bunch of characters who sit and monologue about what all these things mean.
Very complicated. It's very complicated because they want to bring back Agent Smith, and that doesn't really make sense. And now we have to get from this MacGuffin to that one, and that one, like you said. And the plot becomes so like, it's just too much. Like there's too much. And then they want to have all these themes on top of it. So to make those new characters incorporated into these themes, and they don't really feel like they're Matrix characters anymore. They feel like gods, but in a way.
But it's both.
The ones that we meet.
It is both too simple and too convoluted. Because I wouldn't say it's complex or complicated. I would say it's convoluted. That'd be the word I'd use.
Maybe.
It keeps like every time they get to something, we have to get to the keymaker. Okay. Oh, we have to get to the door of light. Okay, you're just making up concepts and saying the characters have to get to them, and you kind of gloss over what any of these things are or mean under the pretense of, oh, it's the mystical prophecy of the Oracle, and there's so much talk about prophecies in this one. And the first film had so much to say about what it was about, right? It was everything it was talking about with the character of Neo and the believing in himself, and then we talked in our discussion of the first one about how you could add on the trance like layer to that and everything else. It did all that without ever like having to outright say what it was about. This movie tells you every 10 minutes this movie's about choice, and it's about do we have choice, the illusion of choice, is this just another method of control? Like they repeat the key points of the conversation over and over again just so we definitely get it in our heads that this is what the movie's about. It's usually a goddamn 5-year-old. Everything that makes the first movie good, this movie fails miserably at.
I do hate that Agent Smith is in this movie.
I
get that, like, well, we're in the Matrix again, and we're still dealing with Neo, so we need to have a villain. Well, the villains are the agents still. So we can't have an agent who's going to be as good as Hugo Weaving, so let's just bring 500 Hugo Weavings into it.
It's like a 12-year-old wrote it. I mean, apart from the MacGuffin thing, it's like, oh, we want Agent Smith, but, well, Neo's super powerful now and can do anything, so how do we give him a threat that's big enough? How about 500 Agent Smiths? Like, it's a 12-year-old's idea. And the action...
It's a shame that they couldn't come up with just a new character for the new villain.
Yeah. And then they
came up with a lot of characters.
Yeah, but they're meaningless. The action of this film, because of the Agent Smith thing, basically turns into just anime shit. And that's not a comment on the CG looking terrible, because it does, but more just like it's just combat and martial arts for like 10 minutes for combat's sake. We've got a cool martial arts scene, but it doesn't drive anything.
I mean, there
forward.
are some cool scenes. I do genuinely like a lot of the fights, a lot of the combat. But then, like, at the halfway point, Neo grabs, like, a pole, and then it just becomes a cartoon. And, like, I don't like this anymore. It looks terrible. And it's just become, like, too much. It's just too much going on.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that more, just because I think as soon as it starts, there's no point in the fight scene. It's just a fight. And even when he fights the guy who works for the Oracle, and it's just like, he's like, I'm just going to test you for no reason, so we're going to fight on top of the tables, and it's just...
Well, it's the repeat of the Morpheus fight
Exactly. It's a repeat. It's a callback.
It's a test
to something from the first movie. It serves no purpose here.
It does look good. Like it's well choreographed. It's well shot. Like it's a good fight scene. But yeah,
I don't feel anything
really
from
have
it.
As much
there's
meaning.
Yeah, there's no need for it. It feels superfluous. It's okay. I mean, I wouldn't say it's not a great fight. It's okay. It's just like it's one of these things where martial arts for me, like even if the martial arts are sound, like you have to actually have feeling in it, and because they're just kind of going through the motions because no one's actually trying to kill each other, and there's no reason to like really like defend themselves to the death or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's no real stakes to it, and I kind of feel that in the fight. There's a couple of exceptions which I'll get to, but for the most part, most of the action in the movie feels like it's just, we want to have like a Matrixy style scene, but they go so over the top with all the Matrixy elements of the scene that it just feels like a parody almost of the first film at certain points.
Sure, yeah, like opening the movie with the dream also, and like now Neo is having the ability to prophesize and see like the Oracle does, is I think a mistake also. Like maybe if he is able to sense that something is coming for Trinity, like maybe just don't show exactly what's going to happen, and instead like just have this instinct, like he's always worrying about her. Like he has multiple dreams, or we see like more than one where she dies in different ways. And so it's not like, oh, everything's going exactly as I predicted in my brain. Instead, it's like, he's just always worried for her. So he just always imagines her dying in the Matrix because that's a very probable thing that can happen. It's very dangerous. I don't know. Like, I don't love prophecies in general. But luckily, it's a movie, so it's shorter.
This movie goes all in on it. It really does. There's a lot of talking about prophecy stuff, and I think that we said this at the end of the first one. I think it bears reiterating here though is that the first film had such a perfect ending that felt at the end of the story, and it actually works better without sequels because ultimately the idea being that if once Neo believes in himself, he's then freed from the shackles of everyone doubting him, that he can do anything. That's kind of the metaphor of the movie. And so at the end of the film, when he does fly off and it's like, he's going to free everyone now, it's like, well, that's it. He's going to save them now, and that's it. We don't necessarily need to see how. Like this desire to actually tell the story of how he's going to save everyone puts them into this corner of where they have to kind of come up with something. And right away at the start of this movie, it doesn't really feel like that much has changed because Neo's become like superpowered in the Matrix.
He literally is Superman. Like at the end of the movie, he becomes Superman. He flies around like Superman. He's stronger than everyone else. He's like invincible, basically.
One of the few fights that I actually like in the movie, even though there's not a lot of stakes to it, is actually right at the start when they go to the Matrix for this meeting with all the other groups, because that's one of the things the movie expands upon, is that we meet other groups that go into the Matrix, other ships. Yeah,
I think they brought this up in
Morpheus.
In the first film, that there are other ships, like the Nebuchadnezzar is just one of many ships.
They definitely did.
Which is interesting. Like you don't see other people from the Matrix in the first movie, so like, oh, okay, like agents are always trying to track down like the Zionists that enter the Matrix. Yeah,
no, I wasn't saying that this was like something out of nowhere, but it's just something that expands from the.
That's definitely something that was brought up in the first film, so. It makes sense that that's something they would proceed in the sequel.
It's a shame all the characters are terrible that they add, and it takes away.
I don't like Jada Pinkett Smith.
It takes away a lot of the charm when there's just this room full of people wearing leather jackets like they're at a Matrix party.
And super cool sunglasses.
It looks really cosplayery, and it kind of, I don't know. There's just something about it that's a bit weird. But anyway, what I was saying is, so during this meeting, like there's the teaser Smith, but a couple of regular agents show up, right? And Neo's like, oh, there's agents coming, go and tell everyone to go away. And it's like, okay, Neo can fight agents and stuff, so Neo stays behind, and in comes in 2 or 3 agents. And I like this scene on its own because it's like, okay, yeah, let's see how he does take on like 3 regular agents now. Like, how good is he now that he's practiced being Superman for a while, and he is good at this shit. And that, because it's a brief scene and there's not really any CG for the most part, it's just done traditionally like the first film did it, where they're doing actual wire work and they're doing a proper fight scene.
No, definitely, it's a good fight scene.
And it's just, I think because it serves a purpose. It's like, okay, here's where Neo is now. This is how he takes on some agents, and how everyone else is protected by it. Admittedly, though, so what I'm about to say is I'm going to complain a little bit that it feels a little bit like it devalues the end of the first film. That we find out that most people in Zion don't actually believe in the one. There's obviously there's some zealots and stuff, but for the most part, Morpheus actually comes off in this film as a bit of a delusional nut job because everyone else thinks he's crazy. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a terrible idea. I actually think the idea that not everyone believes in the idea of the one is at least a little bit interesting. And there's a few ideas in this film that I think are interesting.
I'm pretty sure that was also brought up in the first movie. That Morpheus, like, because he went to the Oracle about it and she's told him, like, you would find the one, that he became obsessed with it, but nobody else, like, really believes him.
It may have been a passing line of dialogue. It wasn't like that heavily focused on, though.
No.
But I don't... The problem is that everything that this does, if you don't have anything to actually tell with the story, then, like, if you're not going to do anything with it, because one of my big problems with Neo having all these powers in this movie is that other than one or two small things, right? Well, actually, there's one big example, but for the most part, it doesn't really do anything mechanically with it. And I also have mechanics when I'm talking about movies, when they set up their own rules and they set up the world that they're in. Like, if you're going to do a Matrix sequel, then use the mechanics and the rules of the Matrix, which this movie doesn't do a lot of, and by that I mean, having to get to a landline, in time to get out, or having to, the rules that they operate under. And one of the few things that actually does a good job with this is later on in the big, the freeway chase, right? Not so much the actual car chase itself, which is fine. Like, I don't have necessarily a problem. I mean, the CG's not good, but other than that, like, the actual concept of the scene is decent enough. Forgetting that they're just there because they've got this MacGuffin man that they're trying to protect. But other than that, the actual action of it's fine. But the one part of that scene that actually is really good, and this is something they absolutely should have done in the sequel, and it's the one thing they kind of get right for me, is that at some point in the film, either Trinity or Morpheus, in this case it's Morpheus, needs to be left alone and forced to fight an agent. The idea being that obviously we know Neo can take them on by the droves now. We literally see him fighting 1,000 of them earlier on in the movie. Yeah. But putting Morpheus in a position where Morpheus, you start to believe that maybe Morpheus might just do it. Like, maybe he can actually go toe-to-toe with an agent. And maybe the lesson there, the moral there could be that, yeah, you believe Neo's the one, but believe in yourself too. You can do this. Like, you actually have your own self-worth. Like, you can do this. So there's a few moments there that I think are good. Like, the idea of, like, taking Neo out of the equation and having the others in jeopardy, I think is important. Because, I mean, let's face it, in the first Matrix movie, before Neo trains up, they are all badasses. Like, they're all presented as badasses who can do badass things and or whatever. But yeah, so I mean, So there's a few good ideas in the film that I think are poorly executed. We get to see Zion, for example. The people of Zion I kind of hate almost entirely, which is a bit of a problem, I think.
It's a strange representation. I mean, it's just like a party planet. It's just an odd choice. Like, we're all here, we're alive. We may not be alive tomorrow, so let's all have sex and party.
Yeah, I mean, you're referring to the infamous rave scene, which is stupid, and I do hate that. And I can't...
Are you talking about, like, the bigger picture? Of,
I'm talking about everything. I'm talking about everything in Zion. I'm talking about Zion and the people in it in general. But just to go to that scene, since you brought it up, like the speech Morpheus gives before the rave begins, I hate that too. I think his dialogue there is, again, it feels like it's written by a 12-year-old who thinks, I'm going to write a speech for Morpheus. This is what Morpheus is going to say to everyone that might be potential
Morpheus
followers.
Morpheus is the hype man for Zion, yeah. Yeah,
but, like, you know how there was that one line that I didn't like in the first Matrix movie, right? And it wasn't anything to do with Laurence Fishburne. I just didn't like it. I thought it was overwritten. Half of what Morpheus says in this movie sounds like that to me. Like, a lot of it sounds like shit. It sounds like... I don't want to just keep saying a 12-year-old wrote it, but that's what it sounds like, though, when he's talking about there comes a point later in this movie when he starts to talk about, believing they can end the war and the prophecy will be fulfilled, Neo's going to save us. There is a point where I kind of stopped buying into it as an audience member, because look, you keep showing me the greater content. In the first movie, this worked. Partly because it was better written, but also because we had such a condensed view. We had just the ship. We had just this core cast. We had just the story of Neo. We didn't have this greater scope. And it does dip into some bigger picture things, but theoretically, seeing Zion is not a bad idea, and meeting the people of Zion is not a bad idea.
I mean, it's expected.
Right? It's expected, though, only because it's I think my big problem with this movie is that I don't feel like it has anything to say. So there's a lot of things that I think it's just doing. Like, we're only telling the story of how Neo ultimately ends the war, because it's the only thing you can really do if you're going to do a sequel to The Matrix, is, okay, how's he actually going to do it?
Well, if I could speak.
Please do.
At all. I mean, for me, the first movie is so perfect as a standalone because Neo represents all of us. Like, he is special because he's not being oppressed anymore, because he realizes that he's stuck in a system and he's able to break out of it. And because of that, he has all this potential and he becomes special, the most special. And it's like, okay, so Neo, like, we're all being oppressed in a way, and we all have potential to be special. And so after the movie's done, like, and he becomes Superman, it's like, oh, well, now we can be that. And adding sequels to it means that no, he is truly the only one that is special. So, yes. And we have to tell his story now. And so you kind of have to accept that this is going to not be great. Like, these sequels now are gonna not be great. We're just gonna have to take what we can get and see what they do with it, which means that they're just going to play inside this world, expand the universe. And I am still a little curious about that. Like, I am curious about how they're going to recreate this sandbox, and what kind of new characters they're going to introduce, and how they're going to expand this world. And there is nuggets in there that I enjoy still, even though the movie's not great. It was never going to be great. It's kind of cursed to not be great because of the way the movie ends.
Well, don't get to summarize then. Let's stay on Zion and its people, because I mean,
I wanted to say this like 20 minutes ago when you started talking.
Okay.
So I'm not going to like summarize everything exactly, but I just my overall thoughts after watching the movie are just like, some of the ideas I do like, and just accepting that this is not going to be as good. It's kind of like watching the first Jurassic Park and going, that was great. Now let's watch some schlock in that world, some B-movie style. So, I guess maybe I have a more positive outlook than you do on this, because I've already accepted that it's not going to be great. But let the Wachowskis play in the sandbox and expand it and see what they create. And I don't hate all the MacGuffins. I don't hate the Keymaker storyline. I don't hate the architect. I hate some of the other creatures that they come up with. Some of the stuff is a little bit ridiculous. It reminds me of more newer Wachowski projects, like the ghosts and vampires and stuff, and werewolves, things, which we'll get to. That stuff seems a little, it seems a little silly. Like they want to add too many things to it. Anyway, yeah, I guess I've talked enough, but that's what I wanted to say like a long time ago.
I'll be honest, I thought you'd summarized your thoughts already at the start. I didn't realize there was more. But to go back to Zion, right? To go back to the people of Zion, right? I don't give a shit about a two dialogue setup for a love triangle between Morpheus, Will Smith's wife, and the future Martian Manhunter, right?
Oh yeah, that is who he is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like that is it's just designed so that every time this character shows up, he's mad that Niobe, which is Will Smith's wife's character, and Jada Pinkett Smith, like her character Niobe, right, who captains her own ship. Every time it comes up, it's just so he can look angry or jealous or whatever. That is basically all it is, at least in this movie. I don't like the council. Like any like, there's very few examples to me where, because this feels more fantasy than sci-fi, right? Where you have the council, and you have them like talking. Like there's a scene like halfway through the movie where Martian Manhunter's like describing his plans for this like defense of the attack, because the Sentinels are coming, they're drilling down. That's what they're dooming and glooming over, and we have the one kind old man on the council who's like saying, no, we will give Morpheus his chance and we'll send a ship out to help him and whatever.
An actor we see many times.
We have?
Yeah, he was in Omega Man. He was in.
Oh yeah. He's a bit older than this. Yeah, but you're right. Yeah,
he was in something else that we watched. Oh, The Dead Zone. He's in Star Trek Insurrection. He's a Badmiral.
He's a Badmiral. Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no.
He's got great eyebrows. That's why he's easy to recognize.
Because the first like 45. I mean, the whole thing was boring as shit. There's a whole speech later on about cause and effect from the wannabe French guy. But we're talking about the cause, and we're going to keep talking about the cause. But I'll just tell you what the effect is. The effect is I was bored shitless the entire time because nothing was engaging.
Clever.
Right. Right. Because all this Zion stuff, like, they made it so painfully dull. Like, everything about it. Like, Neo's got, like, a super fan who comes up and, like, wants to join the crew and, like, won't leave him alone. He's trying to hump his leg. And then there's all the people who want to, like, give Neo offerings because they see him as, like, the chosen one and, like, the second coming or whatever. And you've got all that. But I think, so this was mostly pretty dull to watch. It's a very poorly paced opening act, I think. But the moment for me where I went, oh god, this is not going to get any better, is the scene where after the rave is terrible, right? The rave is tedious. I was like, as soon as the rave started, like, I was on Twitter, just like, the rave's happening. I don't need to really pay attention to it.
Oh, you missed naked Carrie-Anne Mouse?
There's rave things going on. But after that, right, so Neo wakes up because he can't sleep, and nice old man from the council comes up and says, hey, do you want some company? And they start having a conversation. And he takes him down to, like, the engineering area, because they're near the core, and there's all these big machines they've got that are reprocessing the heat and the water and whatever. And he gives him this speech about, oh, we need these machines to live, and yet there's machines from above that are trying to kill us. It's like... And there's a bit in the middle of this speech that he's given him where the word the point, or maybe that's the point, or not the point, or I have no point, is like thrown around like 5 times very quickly between them, and I'm like, this is terrible. This writing's trash. Like, what's happening? What is this conversation flow? It has no flow, and it's obviously setting up some of the themes of the movie and the idea of codependence and whatever. But they talk about choice, right? That's the big thing, is Neo says, well, we have the choice to turn these machines off. But he's like, yeah, but if that happens, then, we wouldn't have heat or water, we'd all die. So we don't really have a choice. We have the illusion of choice, which is, and there's the key phrase, illusion of choice, which is what the whole movie's really about. And this scene is just like, if you compare it to the first film, like, yeah, obviously there's a lot of exposition in the first film explaining what the Matrix is, and explaining who the characters are and all that sort of stuff. But I don't think there's a scene, right? There's a couple of phrases where, he tells Neo to believe in himself or whatever, but there's no, like, scene where they have to, like, spell it out and, like, really introduce what the themes of the film are in such with a hammer, this just blunt way where you're just getting hit in the face with it. And this is like 40 minutes out of the movie. This movie's 2 hours and 20 minutes long, and it takes a long time before it gets going to the point where, Neo and Morpheus and Trinity and our new guy, Link from Lost, Michael from Lost, he's the new, like, pilot / comms guy when they're in the Matrix. Like, it takes a while before they're going back up. And
you think he's called Link because he's linked to Tank and the other guy?
Dozer. Yeah, what happened
Dozer.
to is Tang? Because Tang was the one that didn't die, right? There was one of them that lived.
One of them lived, unless he got killed at the end of the first one.
No, he was still alive at the end, I'm sure. But it seemingly he's died between movies because every time
Maybe he died from his wounds.
every time they bring him up, it's like, oh no, he's dead.
Yeah, both both Tank and Dozer
Yes.
are dead.
Yes. And Link's wife is really worried about him because she's lost two brothers to that, and he made this promise to like take their place or something. And that's kind of that. And his sister-in-law is Zoe from Firefly, which, hey, nice, but minor role.
Maybe she comes back in the third one. Something a bit more.
Well, I think there's more Zion in the third one because that's like the big thing is them defending Zion. So I expect we will see maybe more of these Zion characters. But yeah, the first chunk of this is really pulley paced. It really felt to me. I don't want to say it's like the Star Wars prequels exactly, but in the way where no one was telling George Lucas no, and it was just like adding scenes and scenes of meetings and talking about what's going on and things like that. There's just a lot of that going on, and it never. And the first film is so well put together. The way it narratively like keeps building on what it's showing you and what it's teaching you. And
honestly, the only thing that really feels like the first film is Neo. Everything else like feels different. It doesn't seem like it's part of the same world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where I think the mystery of Zion, like hearing about it and not seeing it, was just more intriguing than actually seeing what it was. And that's not to say that you couldn't expand it and show Zion and do things there potentially.
Yeah, I mean, it's still interesting. Like you have these people who have never been plugged in. Even when Neo is talking to the older councilman, who's like saying like he slept the first 11 years of his life, made me go, okay, so he was 11 when he got pulled out. He's clearly much older than Neo, so he got pulled out in like the 60s. And does that mean like he had to use like a wall phone? And I was trying to like think of how it worked. Like, would it have still been the 1960s there? Would it still been like the 1990s?
I think still the 90s because they talk about when Smith describes it in the first film, it's like no, it's just perpetually the end of the 20th century. Yeah,
right. So there's no advancements in technology. It's just everything just is frozen in the 90s.
Well, as we find out later on, it's a cycle that keeps restarting, so maybe it does start a bit earlier. And
I think we had this discussion in the first movie and stuff, but it got me thinking about it. Like, I don't know. I don't hate all the stuff. The rave scene is just like what are we watching?
There's no momentum. That's the problem I have with it. There's nothing driving from scene to scene. It's all talking about the one threat that's coming, but there's no motivation from one scene to the next that drives it. We're constantly just waiting for them to like get to the point of what all this is. It's and I think it needs a better focus, and there's nothing wrong with the themes that the movie's about. Like the theme of like the illusion of choice, like saying, oh, the actual existence of Zion and the humans that are outside the Matrix are actually just an extension of controlling the human race. It's an interesting enough concept, like in a way. I mean, don't get me wrong, it does devalue the end of the first film, so I'd still rather it didn't exist. But if you're going to do something, that's not a bad idea. That's not a bad concept to play with.
And you like literally meet God at the end of this film too.
In a sense,
God's whole thing, like if he's all knowing, and the whole idea of like, I guess it's sort of a repeat of the first film of like, do you have a choice if everything is written out for you, if everything has been coded?
Yeah. So I feel so little momentum in anything. I feel like I'm just waiting for each scene to play out to get to where the plot's going to kick into gear, where characters are going to be motivated to do the next thing. And instead, like, Neo is literally waiting for a phone call. He's waiting for the Oracle to phone him. And he's putting so much like stock in getting contacted by the Oracle to like have some sort of direction of what to do next, that it feels like he has no he has no direction of his own. He's no confidence to just do the right thing or do what he feels is right. It still feels like he's waiting to be told, which is one of the few things that he shouldn't feel like after the end of the first film. You know, the end of the first film, the whole point is that he doesn't need to be told his direction anymore.
Right, like he's free, and now he's going to Superman his way to free other people.
Yeah, and it's not just in the context of Neo, just in the context of any movie. If the first 40 minutes of a movie is someone waiting for a phone call so the plot can really begin, that's a problem structurally.
Sure,
From
yeah.
a pacing perspective.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And there is, again, one of the other interesting ideas, which could be the entire concept of a movie. The entire movie could have been, oh, what if an agent, like, well, admittedly, the agents don't take over people. Well, they kind of do in the first movie, but not in the same way that Smith in this movie, like, literally takes them and whatever. But the idea that an agent, like, beams down the phone into, like, a human's body and then is there as an infiltrator on Zion, that is a really interesting concept. That is an interesting idea that feels like a unique premise for another movie. The idea of the machines infiltrating our world, or the real world. I shouldn't say our, because our world's not really like this, but, you know.
Yeah, and I was thinking, you know, I never thought about, like, why didn't the agents just take over Neo or Trinity or something when they saw them in the first movie? Because they could take over anybody. Is there something special about being, like, taking the,
this is obvious.
the red pill that makes you not be able to take over?
It's because they're not part of the Matrix anymore. They can take over anyone who's still hooked in, like, in the traditional sense. I think they can't take over anyone who's been freed and came back in through illicit means.
Well, I mean, they've never said that, so I guess that's just a rule that we can assume.
I think it's pretty safe. Why wouldn't they just do that the first time they see
exactly?
them?
that thought crossed my mind watching this one.
Yeah,
because that's what Agent Smith is trying to do, is take over people who are free.
Yeah, but he's not taking over in the same way that he's not using the Matrix to do it. He's got some black pudding. I mean, forget the visual effect. He's essentially hardwiring into it the person, you know, taking over. Now, why he's back, why he can be back.
Something to do with him being linked to Neo, Christ and Antichrist figure.
It's such trash. It's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo to try and justify, because they wanted Hugo Weaving to be back. I
mean, I understand why you want him back, because he's an iconic villain from the first movie, and how can you top that if you're going to go back in the Matrix? But it doesn't make enough sense, and it's not justified. Like, if you're going to make a trilogy of films, then Agent Smith was the first boss, and now you got to come up with new bosses.
I don't disagree with that. But principally, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think I have even more of a problem with, like, the audacity of just doing it and, like, thinking you can get away with it with some mumbo jumbo, and then just turning it up by having 500 of them, because obviously Neo can take on one. Like, he knows he can take on one now, so we'll just have more and more and more.
Yeah,
and that's all it is. It's so. And that scene is garbage from the start. That entire fight scene, and it's really bad once the CG kicks in, because not only are the faces like PS2 looking graphics, even, like, the part that really bothers me bizarrely is Neo's coat. Like, see when the camera's spinning around him and it's the CG version of Neo, and the coat just looks so, like, fake. Like, it's not there. It's a coat. Yeah. A coat should not be a tough visual effect to pull off. Okay,
it's not like hair.
It's a coat.
No, I agree. I don't hate the fight in the beginning, but, like, once as soon as he grabs that metal pole, like, and it just becomes completely CGI, I was, like, so ready for it to be over.
Yeah, and he's, like, throwing them all up in the air, and they're just,
because
like...
I do enjoy good choreography, like fight choreography, even if it's pointless. Like, if it's done well, then I'll enjoy watching it. You know, they put in a lot of work and it shows, and that I don't mind. But yeah, once it becomes, well, people aren't fighting anymore, it's just a cartoon. I don't enjoy this anymore.
I think it needs to have a purpose. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be a big plot purpose. Like, an example would be, like, some of Jackie Chan's films where the fighting doesn't serve, like, there's not a lot of stakes to the fighting, but there's a lot of humor in the fighting. There's a lot of, like, witty beats to it where it almost tells a little story in the fight itself, with the way that someone's dodging or, like, you know, using certain objects or stuff. This is not doing that. Yes, he does grab a pole at one point and starts using it as a weapon, but it's not there's nothing really that inventive about what he does with it. In fact, the part I really hate is when he sort of puts the pole down and sort of like kicks around, like he's sort of holding on to it and like spinning around it, kicking the Smiths. Like it looks like trash. It really does.
Trash. Yeah, it looks bad. I do chuckle also whenever he throws a Smith at a bunch of other Smiths. It's literally the sound of bowling pins being hit by a ball. I'm like, well, that's pretty funny.
Oh dear. And because that's the other thing that comes right after the scene where he goes to see the Oracle finally, and this is actually one of the things that is a genuinely interesting idea. The idea that the Oracle the whole time, and maybe you could theorize this in the first one, maybe we even talked about it a little bit, but the idea that the Oracle is a machine or is a program. She's part of the Matrix. She's not part of the real world.
Yeah.
And
she's programmed for the one to trust her, for people to trust her. But ultimately, like, who's she working for?
Well, that's where we get to later. Forget that from later. I'm just mean from when the concept's introduced here in this scene, right? Mm-hmm. Forget what this movie tells us about anything else. Just the idea that the Oracle herself is not a human. She is a machine that, in theory, is trying to help the humans for some reason, right? Obviously, the movie does get into like what she actually is and the purpose and all the rest of it later on. But that idea on its own, I think, is really good. Like, and like, okay, why? Because
she's like Clippy. She's just there to help humans if they need assistance. That's her program.
Sure. Well, see, I don't like the idea that. Well, I'm not saying I hate this because the movie kind of does this, but I'm not saying I hate the idea. But I'm saying that she doesn't. The idea on its own does not necessarily mean that she has to be programmed to be what she is. I actually think it's more interesting if she is rebelled in some way, or if she is acting against her programming to help the humans because she's taking sympathy on them or something. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily better, or the idea that she did have a hand in, like, help, you know, as later on she's called the mother of the Matrix. You know, if the architect's the father, she's the mother, right? That's the way it's phrased. But
yeah, although he says it's not her, but whatever.
Yeah,
maybe he was scoffing at the title of the Oracle.
Yeah, he does, but conceptually that is an interesting idea, I think. And this scene is okay. I think the dialogue's pretty bad though. I do have a lot of problems with the way she keeps dancing around the questions and answering them with more questions, and like it comes once again back to the whole idea of like setting up the illusion of choice and like, oh, you've already made that choice, you just don't understand, you're here to find out why you made that choice, you don't understand yet, kind of thing.
You know what part really confused me? It's relevant to the Oracle.
Yes.
When Neo's about to go back into the Matrix to meet the Oracle, the guy who wants to come on board was like, oh, one of the orphans wanted me to give you this, and it's a metal spoon. So the kid that was in the Matrix is also one of the orphans in Zion. Like, is he just? Why was he in the Matrix then? Why would somebody plug in a kid into the Matrix so he can be with the Oracle and bending spoons?
Why do you assume that he was? Why do you assume that he was unplugged before we saw him in the first film? Why couldn't he have been unplugged for maybe he was still in the Matrix at that point? He was just becoming aware of the Matrix before he was pulling out like Neo did.
Okay, so you're saying that he was unplugged afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, they even have a line in the movie that says, "In the last 6 months, we have freed more minds in the last 6 years." So,
okay, well, no more confusion then.
I mean, I'm not saying that's.
But it was
definitely
confused by it. Like, I just thought, like, wait, so that little kid is in Zion and not in the Matrix?
I'll be honest, I didn't think about this at all. I didn't care because all I could think was, oh, you referenced the spoon. Congratulations, movie. You referenced the first movie. This has like some of the problems that nostalgia sequels do, but they have to like just keep referencing and because there's times and places where it works and it makes sense. You know, I said that, you know, Morpheus having to fight an agent's one of the few fights in the whole movie that actually has some tension in it because we know that he may not win. But one of the references that the movie actually does that I think works is that when he's kind of like, he's on top of the truck and it's a good location for a fight scene, and they're fighting out and he's getting his ass kicked a little bit. There's a moment where he sees his katana on the side of the truck, and he pulls it out, and he comes up, and he does the the just bring it hand gesture, and that actually is a really good reference there, because it's a good reference not because it's just like a hey, remember this from the first movie. It's because he's doing that to tell us that he's believing he has a chance, so it makes us want to root for him. It's actually telling us something about what he thinks right now. It's giving us a window into his mind. It's achieving something in the storytelling. The spoon here, like, yeah, okay, there's kids rooting for him, I guess, but like, I don't know what it achieves, really. It doesn't really inform that much. Most of Neo's stuff here, where he's like, he looks like, oh god, all these poor people are trying to give me gifts. Oh, I just want to have sex with Trinity, and she now I have to like.
They've got 36 hours. That's fine.
Now I have to talk to all these brats and like bless their loved ones who are dying and all this Jesus shit. Like, actually, this feels like Zack Snyder watched this scene and based his entire take on Superman. I
definitely had some major Zack Snyder parallels while watching this movie, with the Jesus Superman parallels.
Actually, does it bother you that Link actually references Superman at one point when Neo's flying around?
Oh yeah, and it didn't bother me, no.
It's a bit weird.
It's like obvious, like that's what he is. He's just flying around like Superman.
Yeah, but it's a bit weird that they've got pop culture references. Like, is pop culture from the late 90s in the Matrix? Like,
I guess.
It's a bit weird.
They probably have some TV shows. Why not keep like the most classic, iconic pop culture figure?
I'm not saying like I hate it. It's a bit weird. It makes me feel a bit. I do think Link is used a little bit too often as the cut to the one-liner character in this movie. There's a few, especially towards the end, where it's cutting back to him for just these one quick lines of his reaction, just so that,
or like, cheers.
Yeah, do you know what it is? He's the canned laughter track from a sitcom. He's there for the audience. We cut back to him so the audience knows how to feel. That's
right. Yeah.
That's kind of the.
Sometimes it's contagious. Sometimes it works. He's not a bad actor.
He's not a bad actor at all. It's just, don't take this as critiquing Harold Pinero, if I remember his name correctly, because he is perfectly fine. It's more how the character's being used and how some of the lines are a bit over the top. In fact, the ones that really bugged me is there's a couple of times, and it happens twice in the movie, where Neo's flying towards like where the other characters are to save them, and like he'll say something like, wait, what's that? Something's coming in. And I'm like, you've literally commented earlier that you could see him flying. You called it a Superman thing. So why are you so confused now that something's coming in? And then towards the end of the movie, when he's flying even quicker than he ever has before to save Trinity, he's like, I don't know what that is, but I've never seen anything move so fast. I'm like, do you think there's a possibility that the one being that goes into the Matrix,
flies like Superman,
might be this thing you're seeing in the Matrix right now? Is that just a thought that's occurred to you? Maybe. just I don't know. It occurs to him going, wait, what's that coming in? Like, it's probably Neo. it's probably Neo, right? Okay. very few things. I do like the idea. I almost wish to set up earlier in the movie, or maybe if it had been mentioned in the first one, if they'd like thought of this ahead, but setting up the idea that the freeway is a very dangerous place to go, mainly because there's so many people driving around that like an agent could be.
It's easy for agents to skip around.
Yeah, like even if in the first film when like Morpheus is like setting up the rules, if he said like, oh, there's certain areas you should avoid because of like all the people, and maybe he could list a few examples, like a sports game, the freeway, maybe a few different examples. So then in this one, when they bring up
going to Disneyland,
they're going to Disneyland. So in this one, when they say we have to go to the freeway, like Trinity's reaction to it played well enough. Don't get me wrong; it's not like it needs to set up. But,
you said that was suicide.
Well, let's hope I was wrong. Honestly. Yeah, that sequence is a standout, and it's not. And I don't think all of it's great. Like I think some people really love that freeway sequence, and some of it's a little too CG.
I do. I'll stick up for it. There's a lot of this film where they add. They don't really have a lot of bullet time, with the exception of like the prophecy scene, but they have a lot of slow mo, like much more than the first one. Maybe they just had better cameras or whatever, so they wanted to utilize that more. But it's okay. It gets overdone a bit, and it's used in the freeway scenes, and I don't love it each time. But like, for the most part, like with the exception of some of like the people jumping on cars that looks very cartoony, I enjoy basically the whole freeway scene.
There's some decent stunts. I'm not a big fan of most of the slow motion in this movie because I think they do rely on CG too much for it. And it feels, like I say, a little bit parody-esque in the first film. But I will say I do like the way the camera kind of spins around and goes under the overpass just before the fight on top of the truck takes place. Because it ends up, Morpheus is there, he's protecting the Keymaker, and the agent's there. The way the camera kind of spins around, and obviously there's CG at the start of the shot, but then it does this sort of quick kind of transition at the end to go into them when they start fighting. That I think is because it's timed with their first sort of punches, it does actually look quite good the way it kind of transitions into it. So I'll give that. There's some good motion there to like go with the flow of the scene, which I'll give some credit to.
Yeah, and Trinity on the bike is like really good white knuckle intense scene because she can't go to the side because then the agents can just catch up to her, and then she can't go to the other side because then they can go straight down the opposite direction of the freeway and they can shoot at her, so she has to like weave in and out through opposite traffic. Like those are really good scenes.
And I think one of the things that someone might say, because I'm saying that Morpheus and Trinity can actually be in jeopardy, is that they're going to throw something at me, which is, well, you like Superman, and you think Superman stories can function, even though he's like so indestructible, and that is very true. And essentially, this movie falls into the trap of not knowing what to do with the Superman-esque character. I don't think they do know what to do. So
they endanger Lois Lane instead.
Well, that's often done, but that's not the point I'm getting at. Is that good writers do good stories with Superman. They find ways to make things have stakes and give him something that isn't a physical threat, or give him something. Yeah, maybe it is saving someone, maybe it's saving a whole city, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's pushing him into a corner where he has to make a tough choice, maybe it's a number of different things. Or you give him a villain that actually can go toe to toe. Like, maybe it's just much of a simple idea. Maybe like, yeah, what if like they put a bunch of super programs together to try and make the ultimate program that maybe Neo would have a hard time fighting or something. I don't know. Which is kind of why I like the idea of like an agent somehow infiltrating the real world and going after him where he doesn't have any superpowers is a very interesting idea that maybe, like I say, that could be the premise of the whole movie. The funny thing is in this movie, the guy has like one scene where he's cutting his hand because he wants to see what it's like to bleed. And then, I should just say Human Smith, I guess. And then Human Smith, other than that, like, he pops up for the cliffhanger at the end.
He's set up for the next film.
Yeah, he's more set up for the next film than this one. But,
yeah,
like, that concept could be a whole movie on its own. But
and maybe it is. Maybe it's in the next movie. I don't really remember.
No, it's not the whole movie. That'd be too
I don't know.
fortunate.
Maybe it's the setup.
Nah.
I definitely remember him fighting Smith in The Matrix in the rain, though. So that's probably the big ending.
Well, I do think that you should have these characters in jeopardy, and that should be something that you use to create tension in certain scenes. These are characters that are predetermined as action characters, though, who we saw fighting, we saw in combat, we saw doing stuff in the first movie. And if anything, Morpheus was a little underused in the first movie from that respect, because he got captured, and that was like kind of early in his plot, relatively speaking, and he spent a lot of time tied up, and we didn't get to see Morpheus in full action mode where he was just taking on bad guys. Now, admittedly, I'm not a big fan of the twins as villains in this for them to fight.
Milli Vanilli, they were cool in the poster.
They just kind of feel a little bit try-hard to me, which I think it goes for a lot of the designs of the new characters in this film.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel. This is the thing, when Neo goes to Oracle, it's a video game. It's like, hey, you have to go find the Keymaker, you'll find him at this guy's place, and this leads them to the French, or the wannabe French dude, who just monologues for like 10 minutes, and then gives some cake to a woman that gives her an orgasm. credit where credit is due for the visual of the explosion of the Matrix code in her crotch, just to represent said orgasm. I completely forgot about this. Scene.
Yeah, me too.
This reminded me. There was a movie we did on Screams a couple of years ago. I think it was called The Black Room, The Black Door. But it was about like a sex demon who like possesses this guy, and he does kind of this same thing where he doesn't use cake, but he just kind of makes someone randomly have an orgasm in a restaurant. And it's like a whole thing, and it makes me think of that, and I'm like, yeah, okay. This is like a genre of scene now. All right, thanks for that.
Yeah. Merovingian? Is that his name?
The Merovingian. That sounds right.
Yeah,
that
sounds right.
I don't really care because he's not that good.
I mean, he's intriguing because he's clearly like he's one of the more interesting characters that we meet because he's like an NPC, but he's got like this other. He's programmed to want pleasures, like the pleasures of the Matrix, and he has like a personality, and it's not like an agent, you know. We meet somebody who is designed by the Matrix, or it maybe is a designer of the Matrix. It's hard to really know what they are.
Yeah, I wouldn't say NPC. I mean, they use the word program, so the idea the keymaker as well has a purpose. So there's programs who exist as people in the Matrix is essentially the idea. He also
he is a programmer, right? Because he's programmed the cake to be able to give a human an orgasm. So like he has these abilities, and he loves the pleasurable things in life.
Sure. He also gives us the first hint of the stuff at the end, because he refers to the predecessors. He's talking to Neo, which is kind of a hint. This entire section though kind of like solidifies everything that's wrong with this movie to me, in terms of compare it to the first, in terms of like pacing, narrative structure, and like scenes themselves feeling like they have a purpose. Like so many scenes in this movie are about waiting to find out where they have to go, going there, then sitting down and talking to someone, and then that leading to the next breadcrumb. If you look back at the first movie, like think about those early scenes in your mind, right? Or even all the way through the movie where it was, okay, so Neo gets this hint of something. He goes to pursue this hint of the tattoo, which leads to Trinity. He wants to know what Morpheus, he wants to know what the Matrix is. There's a question. There's constantly these questions being asked that are interesting. He wants to be a part of that. He ends up being chased by agents around the office. The scene has a purpose because it shows that he's still too scared to kind of like make the leap of faith, as it were. All those things, and it keeps driving things forward, and it keeps causing reactions in like a new direction, but the goal's ultimately kind of the same, and it feels like there's a narrative through line of where the journey's always heading, whereas here is a video game fetch quest where it's just like this thing leads to this thing, which leads to this thing, which leads to a magic door, which leads to the meeting that Neo was destined to have at the end of the movie. But there's no actual character journey for Neo in this movie. There's no arc. And I guess it's a two-part story, so maybe you could forgive it somewhat, but I don't even know if it sets up an interesting enough arc that could be half of an arc. Like, what is Neo... I mean, he learns about some true things about the Matrix, but what does Neo learn about himself in this movie? What does he... Maybe if it emphasized the idea that would he be willing to, like, sacrifice everyone or whatever to save Trinity or something like that, maybe there'd be something there.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that's the main thing for him, is that we learn that he is not special, but then maybe he is, because everybody before chooses to save Zion, but he chooses love. Like maybe Trinity is like the thing that makes him special this time, because he has love. Because that was sort of the thing in the first movie, right? Where like it was the bond between them, which is why he was special. Yeah,
but that doesn't answer the question of what's the arc. That's not an arc, though. That's just he's already in love with Trinity at the start.
I mean, we're just learning more about the world, and that its history, and that maybe they're not as in control as they think they are. Maybe they're not free after all. But then Neo still is able to one up them somehow.
This is the fundamental problem with this as a sequel, though, to The Matrix, is that Neo doesn't have an arc in this film because he completed his arc. So there's nothing in him that in this film specifically driving him, and he comes across as very kind of like, I don't know what to do. Like the whole movie, he's just kind of there. He's told where he goes where he's told to. he wants to go get the answers, but there's not really like a drive or like a proper struggle from within of like, oh, this is how he's to learn to be a leader, or this is how he's going to learn how to like, I don't know, whatever. But it's not there. Like the whole film, he's very passive. He's a very passive character. And the whole arc of the first film is that you have someone who has the potential to be someone special and realizes they're special. There's a clear arc that's really solid. And that's fundamentally what makes a good story is an arc. Learning more mythology about the world is fine and all, if it's good. And some of it arguably is good, some of it isn't. But ultimately, even if it's all good, it's not necessarily enough to actually build a movie around. It's not a story. On its
Well,
own.
I mean, it's only half of one. So, I mean, hopefully the third movie will give us an arc for some of them. But, you know, I really don't remember, so I don't know.
Yeah, but I don't care. Even if the third one's a 10, I don't care. This one's still shit. This one was still tedious to watch. It was still boring the entire time because there's no direction for anything. It's just waiting for MacGuffins and going for MacGuffins. Like there's no heart to it, really. Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't, like, we can see. I mean, the third one I'm pretty sure is worse than this one. So I don't think holding out hope that it's going to justify this one retroactively is really that like worth thinking about anyway. But even if it is,
well, for the people who are watching the trilogy for the first time and listening to our reviews, as you said, maybe there's hope.
But even if it is a 10 out of 10, like, this would still be like a terrible middle entry because it feels like it's spinning its wheels. It's almost like there is enough ideas throughout this film to make me think there is enough for like a 2 and a 3, but the way it's actually presented, it does feel like this is just killing time. This movie, it feels like it's dragging out like the first act of something before the real story mostly happens in the second one or the third one in this case. But it you know, so if it's not satisfying, if it's not a satisfying chapter on its own, that's a critique. I don't think you can give it some sort of pass because it's technically only half of the story. Like, yeah, but it can still have good cliffhanger. It can still have, you know, the enough of a story that we like. No one came out of Infinity War going, well, you know, hopefully it'll be good to go once we have both halves of it. But you know, that first half was, you know, a little unfulfilling. No, people were like, no, that was a movie about tragedy that was building to this thing where they were going to fail, right? I mean, mild spoilers, I guess, but I mean, kind of the biggest thing on the planet in the last few years. So people know.
Same with The Last Jedi.
Sure, yes.
The movie was about failure.
Yeah. But the point is here is that I don't even think this movie, like, the movie obviously is about the decision that Neo makes at the end, but there's not really an arc. Like, literally all the movie does is talk about making a choice up until that point, but that's not enough to actually build a story out of.
Well, I mean, it's still like, you know, the people at Zion are treating him like so. You know, when he walks into that room and everybody wants them to bless their baby or whatever, and so they're still treating him as like, you are our savior, and then in the end he chooses love over being a savior. I mean, that's really the only thing that he goes through.
Yeah, that's somewhat true. I do think there's the idea of hope though, that because the architect tells him, I guess we're talking about this scene now, right? Because we keep going to it.
Sure.
But the architect tells him that if he doesn't choose to, like, you know, pick 25 people, whatever it is, to like start building a new Zion because we're starting the cycle again, then everyone in the Matrix, everyone who's still connected, will be killed, and Zion will be killed as well because we're going to destroy it because we know how to do that, and humanity will cease to exist. And yeah, we need you to survive at our current standings, but we can survive in a much worse and smaller way without humans, so we'll take that out of spite, basically. And he makes this choice, and I do think there's kind of a hopeful idea that he has. Oh wait, this is like another 24 hours. You're telling me that if I do make this choice of love, I have 24 hours to just win and just like save everyone. So I do think, well, it is love, but I think it's love and hope and the belief that they can win properly. They don't have to do this compromise. They don't have to do this You know.
But it sounds like all the other Neos in the past have chosen to save Zion by starting over.
Oh yeah, they clearly all have. Yeah, he's the first one to break the cycle, which is so it's kind of this weird thing where he's not as special as we thought because it's kind of like programmed into it that there's going to be a one, but he is kind of special though because he's the first one to actually make this choice and kind of rebel against the system. Which I think, you know, the idea that eventually, like, if they build in this, because much like, because one of the most interesting things Smith said about the Matrix in the first film was that the first version of the Matrix was this perfect utopia, but everyone rejected it because you're all used to having a certain level of misery. So, you know, this idea that 1% of people, as the architect puts it, will rebel against the Matrix, and that'll form all the people who leave it, and that'll be Zion and all these people who sort of trying to invade and like fight us and all that. So,
yeah, but they can handle it.
Yeah,
you know?
we'll manage that. We'll sort of build in this idea of the one, but the purpose of the one is to really sort of end the cycle and start the new one by making this deal.
Yeah, it's just a reboot.
Yeah. So even though the idea of the one is an idea of control, and obviously there's themes there, there's ideas there of even when you feel like you have, you know, if you like the idea that you're still in the system, even if you feel like you've got success. So let's say you get the good job and you do all these things and you
catch the big fish,
make a lot of money, you catch the big fish, like as the guy in Birdemic says. Like even at that point, you're still part of the system. You might be high up in the system, you may have some success, but ultimately you're still in the system and you can't really escape it. There's themes there. But all of this is so muddy. Like, everything in the first movie all fit together. Everything felt like it was a unified message, and a point in the themes of the film all worked concurrently together, and it reinforced each other, they all enriched each other. This film was like, okay, you've got the idea of illusion of choice and the control, and the idea of being still in the system that was holding you down in the first place, which is annoying because it just kind of devalues the end of the first movie, and ultimately I'd rather just forget these two exist and just the first movie's the end of the story and that's it.
Maybe the fourth one will be a 10 out of 10, and we'll be glad that these movies exist. Who knows?
No. No. Even if the fourth one's a 10, this one still sucks. There's no retroactively making this okay. This movie is bad. Fine. This movie is just plain bad. And I get that you want to be positive. I get that, but nothing, like, this movie is dull. The pacing is horrible. The narrative structure has no momentum. The messaging is like thin at best, which is particularly stands out because the first film, like every single scene, we spoke about how every single scene builds the messages and builds the themes and reinforces those themes consistently, and every scene feels like it adds to it. This one, you're waiting around and then they'll just sort of monologue the idea at you a little bit, and then it'll be
a fight.
Yeah, like I hate the fight in the like see at the so Monica Bellucci, who's with the French dude, she agrees to help them, but only if Neo will kiss her, like he's in love with her, which of course Trinity wants to shoot her in the face for.
Yeah, it's funny.
But Neo's like, all right, I'll do it.
I don't really understand her character of Persephone. Like, I don't really understand her point. Like, she's there with the Merovingian, I remembered, and he's like they're like some sort of partners, or lovers or whatever. But then I assume it's a programming thing, like they complement each other for what their purpose in the Matrix is. But I don't really know exactly what her role is in the movie, other than like she really believes in love and loves to feel love. Otherwise, I don't really know what she is.
I don't have an answer for you because she's a thin character.
Yeah.
This is the thing. You come at this from I'm not critiquing you here, right? I guess I kind of am, but in a positive way. Like, you came at that assuming that you don't understand something, and you're hoping that I'm going to tell you this is what it is, and I'm telling you, no, this is not your fault. This is the movie's fault.
I was hoping we'd have some like back and forth and maybe figure it out together, but
there's nothing to figure out. This is the movie not being good.
It's just that, the first time I saw this movie, I was so intrigued by the Merovingian and by her, because there were these different things in the Matrix. Like they they're kind of like these little demigods that walk among us. So they have interesting personalities or they have an interesting purpose. But I don't really understand Persephone's is all. Other than Monica Bellucci is like a mega hot, so let's put her in a tight dress.
I don't have an answer for it. I really don't think that. I think the movie is so thinly written with these new characters. I think obviously Niobe gets a little bit of time because she's meant to be this kind of love interest for Morpheus, and she has the one moment where she comes in and sort of like saves the day and is there to help out later in the film. But she's not really got that much to do, and everyone else is there to be a red shirt. Everyone else is there just so we can have a high body count and people can die. But
I did like that scene where they blow up the ship though, and we see them in the Matrix just kind of fall at their station. Oh yeah, super dangerous.
Oh sure,
people can just die, be deleted.
What I was getting to though, the French display. I don't care what his name is. I really don't give a shit.
He's gonna come back, so
I don't care. He's terrible. I hate the character, but I hate the fight scene. I hate the fight scene that takes place after all this, where Monica Bellucci helps him. It's just fluff. It has no, like, we've introduced these twins just so we have got some villains to have an action scene against. That's all the reason they exist, right? They're there, like, as much as some of this scene is good, right? As much as some of the fighting with Morpheus is good because of what it does for Morpheus's character, all of this just exists artificially so that this movie has a big climactic action scene. It's not even at the end, but
it's there to separate Neo from everybody else. Because everyone else gets put in danger because Neo can't get to them. Because the key maker disappears. He goes through a door. And once that door closes, the portal is closed.
And? So what?
So Neo is like on the other side of the world or whatever.
I get that, but why do you even need, like, all of this is artificial. I'm not saying...
It just makes it so that they're in danger and he can't get to them.
No, I get that part. And that's what makes the Morpheus stuff and the Trinity stuff work in the context of the scene itself.
Yeah.
But this actual action scene in the context of the film doesn't really need to exist. Right? The action scene that Neo's fighting all the guys at the stairways, like, I hate that scene. It's just nothing but fluffy martial arts for the sake of fluffy martial arts.
I don't hate it. Like, it's mostly not CGI. So, like, at least the martial arts is fun to watch.
I don't think it's that fun, though. I think it's boring because there's nothing inventive about it. It's just kind of typical movie martial arts, and it's just, there's no stakes because Neo's clearly going to win. He's not going to do anything.
Well, they got weapons this time.
Oh yeah,
one that makes him bleed.
Anyway, but no, the point I'm making though, the new point I'm making, because you said the purpose of this is to separate Neo. Yeah, the purpose of separating Neo is to, like, give us, the chance to feel vulnerability for Morpheus and Trinity. But what is the purpose of, like, essentially what I'm saying is that Neo going to speak to the architect could literally be the opening scene of the movie. Because everything that happens before that point in the movie, because Neo has no character arc before he gets there, other than a lot of, like, mumbo jumbo about the choice and the illusion of choice, all of it's just a bunch of MacGuffins to get to that point in the story. So every single action scene that takes place in this film is just there to be a pit stop as a movie, because it's a blockbuster action movie to get there. So while most of the best stuff in the movie takes place in this big car chase, right? And I agree with that, particularly the Morpheus stuff on top of the truck. Ultimately, none of it really matters because none of it really actually advances any real story. And someone's going to say, but it's there to get the keymaker. Well, yeah, we only need the keymaker though, because the script decided we need a keymaker to get to a door that leads to the conversation which is the only really important scene in the whole movie, is the conversation that he has with the architect. Everything, on some level before that, you could cut out most of it, and it would be fine.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I know. It's just, it's the, how do we get more action scenes with Neo in the film?
But I mean, that's what's so frustrating about it, though, is the first movie doesn't need to do that, because
no,
because when you got,
they worked on the script for like 5 years, although this movie was like 4 years after the first one. Yeah, so they had some time.
But they did both at the same time, if I want to play devil's advocate. But
sure.
I don't care though. Like the first movie, not even just the first Matrix movie, any good movie that has action in it, like the action is always there to serve the story first, not the other way around. And at least if you do have a movie that's just served action first, then it could be fun schlock or whatever. This movie does not want to work as fun schlock in any way, shape, or form, for numerous reasons, which I won't even get into, but it clearly doesn't. And this entire thing, which is, oh, we have to go see this French dude so we can get to the keymaker, which is going to lead to these two action sequences, which, you know, like all of it is just, it's just artificial things. It's artificial obstacles. And I know some smart ass is going to say, well, isn't every story just a series of artificial obstacles to get to like what the end point is? And yeah, brass tacks, that is true on some level, but you don't notice it or you don't feel that way when you're watching the movie or reading the story, because you have characters who are constantly growing and changing and reacting. And
did Newt have to go back into the water inside, and does she have to go back to get her? Like, that's all made up. I'm just kidding.
Well, no, it is all made up. It absolutely is all made up. But the difference is that Ripley making that choice to go back feels like a big deal, because she makes the choice not to be scared that she's going to go save someone, and you root for her because of that. Like, everything in this movie, right, with the exception of maybe the stuff in Zion, which is like the machines are coming to kill us, which I guess is slightly different, but everything with Neo, everything inside the Matrix itself, which is about getting to that meeting with the architect, everything is just made up MacGuffin, made up like adventure you have to go on to get the MacGuffin, and that's all it is. And that is so monumentally disappointing after how tight the story and the script was for the first film. It's actually kind of, it's baffling to me that the same people who wrote the first one wrote this.
Yeah, I understand that. And I really sort of wish that instead of it was a prophecy that Trinity was going to die, that it was just Neo worrying about Trinity and her safety because he's in love with her and she's constantly in danger. It's just giving him also like the power of sight, like the Oracle, adds another layer of confusion as to what Neo is outside of the Matrix. And then we get another one of those at the very end, where he's actually able to control machines outside of the Matrix.
The Sentinels, yeah. I don't think this is that confusing, actually. This makes some sense to me. Well, once you find out from the architect that the one is actually something that is intentional, that he's connected to the Matrix, and therefore I just presume by extension the machine network, it makes sense at this point that he can sense the machines and stop them the same way that he stops things in the Matrix. I mean, I'm not saying I like it, but on a fundamental level, I kind of get what it's doing here.
So, like, the first time I watched it, I remember thinking that, are they trying to tease that Zion is just another layer of the Matrix? Like, he's not really out of it?
I never thought that, no.
No?
No.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's dumb, it never occurred to me that was even a... I think that would have gotten really silly if we'd started doing layers of Matrix.
Yeah.
I think that would have just like really made the whole thing really messy.
Yeah, it would have made it like Inception. That's not where you want to go.
How dare you? Inception is a much better movie than this, so don't even start.
Yeah, maybe about on par.
Oh my god, shut up. I hate you so much right now. Fundamentally, like, everything that's wrong, because it's one thing to like make fun of the CG and the action scenes not being as inventive and just feeling like they're almost like a self parody of the scenes in the first film, and don't really feel like they're breaking ground and that they're being self-indulgent with how over the top they are and all that stuff. I mean, we can talk about all that, but that would be like a separate thing that wouldn't completely break the movie if the writing and the story were not even as good as the first one, just like, you know, competent. And the sad part is that it's such a mess in terms of driving the story forward and like building like a narrative to actually care about, that nothing can fix it. Like, even if all these other things were, let's say the action scenes were great and the CG was great and at least from a popcorn perspective, it was like a spectacle to look at. I would still say this movie was bad. I would still be sitting here telling you it's a bad movie. And I don't think if the action scenes were good, the movie has the right tone to be a schlocky good time. It's just like a dumb action movie because it's trying so desperately to be, pretentious. Like it really wants to be like heady and like poke at big ideas. And the first film didn't have to try. The first film just was. So.
Yeah. One thing I do really love about this film is that the very last song that plays during the end credits is a remix of the Dave Matthews Band When the World Ends, which is a really good song. I really like that, the remix of it.
I never waited to the end of the credits. I turned it off.
Well, there's like 3 songs that play and it's the very last one. So if you stick around, it's there. And I really enjoyed it. So
yeah,
I was a big fan at that time when it came out.
Yeah, I don't even we touched upon everything the architect gets into, to be honest. I feel like there was a lot more in that scene that we've probably glossed over.
I mean, yeah, he says a lot. Another great thing about this is I know you're not a Will Ferrell fan, but the MTV Movie Awards kind of parodied this architect scene with Will Ferrell as the architect, just saying vis-a-vis, ergo vis-a-vis over and over again, and it was pretty funny.
I'll take your word for it.
I think Sean William Scott was supposed to be the Neo character.
I'll take your word for it.
No, you won't. I'm going to send you the video.
I'm not going to watch it.
Why not?
You could try, but I'm not going to watch it.
It's making fun of this movie.
I don't care. My dislike of Will Ferrell's that strong. I'm not doing it.
We'll see about that.
Yeah, I have to say, like, I remember not liking this or the third one, but watching this again makes me actively like worry about the fourth one. Like, best case scenario, it's not a mess. Like that's how I feel right now with Matrix 4.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, the Wachowskis, they don't have a good track record since their one masterpiece. And, watching the Matrix again really made me like kind of excited to watch other Wachowski films just because I just forgot how perfect that movie is.
But then you watch this one.
But then you watch this one and you're like, this feels more familiar. Like this feels like the recent Wachowski stuff.
It feels...
And not that I've seen a lot of their films, but the ones that I have watched are very much just like this.
Not only does every scene in the first film feel dense with, its themes and what it's doing and the design of the world, the design of how everything looks and all the rest of it. This one, like, I would say also feels a little too glossy. Almost like, having an even bigger budget.
It's missing that green filter.
What are you talking about?
The green filter that was in whenever you went into the Matrix. Things got very green. It's not in this one.
It was more green originally. They changed it when they remastered it recently.
Well, you said it was blue originally, and then they added the green.
No. The first film was blue originally, and they added the green.
Yeah.
2 and 3 were always green in the Matrix when they first came out.
Okay.
So
Still doesn't look like it. It doesn't look as gritty.
Yeah, sure. I think they've toned it down though, because they remastered it a few years ago when they did the 4K scans. I think they recolored it, and I think they neutered it down a little bit for whatever reason. The end of the movie, for the record, after they come out, we should probably mention that Trinity makes the choice to go in because one of the teams that are helping pull off this, because there's a whole convoluted thing where to get into this magical door that leads to the architect, the power grid has to be taken down so he can go into the door and all the rest of it. So there's like 2 other teams of Matrix crews hitting power plants and whatever, and the entire team dies at one of them. So that's why Trinity goes in, even though she promised not to go out of the Matrix. Which leads to the agent fight, which leads to Neo making the choice to go and save her instead, and he's flying so fast that all the cars around him are like getting caught up in the blast and the
whirlwind.
The whirlwind, yeah. And he catches her. She dies anyway, and then he brings her back to life by sticking his hand into her body and like restarting her heart, literally with his hand, but in Matrix code, sort of like magic style. And I get the point that it mirrors the first movie because he kind of died and she brought him back by, you know, telling that he loved her. But I mean, I especially hated that she kind of pointed it out by saying, "I guess we're even now." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, shut up! Don't." I mean, I don't.
Yeah, we got it.
I don't like that you're going this literal with like having it flipped and having her die and come back, but I especially hate her saying it.
Yeah.
I especially.
Do you think that there wasn't any bullet time in this movie because it was parodied so much that they just switched to slow motion instead?
Yeah, maybe.
They just couldn't go back to that.
The funny thing is, though, is that it still feels like they're just... While it's a little different because there's no bullet time, it still feels like they're still doing a lot of slow motion because of bullet time in the first one. You know? Like, it still feels like they're adhering to what people expect of a Matrix movie, even though there's no literal bullets whizzing around for the most part.
Yeah.
So, I don't think they achieved be feeling different. I still felt like it was doing the same thing, just not as good because it looked worse.
Yeah, just curious.
The cliffhanger of the film is Neo's actually in a coma. After he stops the Sentinels from attacking them, the ship blows up. He stops the Sentinels with his hand, and then he collapses. And the cliffhanger is that in one of the first outposts where they tried to fight the machines, the Sentinels came down into Zion. A bunch of the ships got sabotaged and were destroyed. And obviously, we immediately go, it's probably Human Smith, right? Mm-hmm. Human Smith's behind this. But the final cliffhanger is that Human Smith is the lone survivor of all these ships, and he's like sitting on the table, like right next to Neo, and it comes up saying "to be concluded," and then all I could hear was "da da 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 da." I think every "to be concluded" or "to be continued" should have the Back to the Future font and that music playing because it makes it better. You won't find me praising Family Guy a lot. But I'll give Family Guy credit when they did I think it was the Star Wars like parodies. They did the Back to the Future thing at the end.
I haven't watched those yet.
It made me laugh. It was a good joke. Just use it in everything. It's fine. Get
Sure.
I love the idea of getting to the end of Friday the 13th part like 6 and it just being like dan 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 dan.
A lot of the clips are funny. Isolated on their own, but as a whole the shows are nauseating.
I concur. Yeah, so Matrix Reloaded, I know there's people who actually do kind of defend this one and think that, you know, they think the third one is bad. Revolutions or Revelations, whatever it's called. I always forget the title of the third one.
I actually don't remember either.
Yeah, but
those both sound right.
There are people who defend this one a little bit and do think it's got some interesting ideas. I think that as a momentum exercise, and I think momentum is one of the most important things in a movie that doesn't get talked about a lot. And I bring it up when it's not right because it does feel poor. And watching this so close to watching the first one again, when I hadn't seen the first one in a long time, obviously seen the first one more than this because it's just a great movie, but watching it so close and sort of rediscovering them both like so close together, like this is genuinely a worse movie than I remember, and I have way more problems than I ever did before.
It does feel like the difference between watching A New Hope and The Phantom Menace.
I think it's a fair comparison. I think it's like the old council guy, he's like the Jedi Council like scenes where they're just sitting around talking about what to do, or
it's like we're just gonna play in the sandbox and expand this universe, and the fans are going to take what they can from it, but it's never going to be the masterpiece of the first one.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything that correlates exactly with midichlorians, but there's definitely a loss of some of the mystique of some of the elements from the first film. I don't know if any of it quite ranks up with, hey, there's literally midichlorians that can,
Yeah.
So, yeah. Plus, it's just a downer. Like one of my least favorite things about sequels that weren't planned is that they often have to kind of ruin the end of the first film to justify why a story can happen. Not in every case, but there's a lot of sequels that they'll kind of retcon the ending or very quickly put the main character back in a
Alien
bad
3.
place. Alien 3 is a good example, yeah.
Even Terminator Dark Fate.
Yeah,
That way.
They often have to like, oh, we have to make sure because we haven't thought of a good new story for the character from the first one. Because that's the good thing about Aliens, right? Is that it takes Ripley and says, okay, she's got PTSD from the trauma of what she went through. Let's make a movie about her, like finding her strength and truly overcoming that trauma. That is like, I know it's simple, but that is the fundamental thing that drives that movie, and it's what makes it feel different because it's not just the same journey as the first time. But so many movies, they have to like, oh, we have to go back to the status quo somehow, so we have to either kind of like quickly retcon or make something bad happen to them just so they go back to what they were before, and then tell the same story again. And I think what's so sad about this is that it basically builds up to a reveal, and it already kind of diminishes a little bit the mystique of the ending, but it's the big reveal with the architect. That scene reveals that, oh yeah, you didn't really break out of the system and become special and become in full control of who you are. You just thought you did. Like, that's
We're
what
always expecting you to do that. Yeah.
Most sequels do that, and it's still bad, but most sequels do that at the start of the sequel. This movie builds up to that reveal at the end. So you have this dull movie with MacGuffin to MacGuffin to MacGuffin, and then at the end, oh, by the way, the end of the first one was not what you thought it was. We've just completely ruined it. So, there you go.
What a shame.
I know you're sick of me rabbiting on, but I do think this is a special kind of bland follow-up.
Yeah, it definitely feels like we want to make something cool again and not something important again.
Yeah, it says we want to make a Matrix sequel as quickly as possible, but we don't actually have a good story. I mean, that's the sad part is there's the fragments of a good story kind of in there. We talked about a few good ideas, but they're just not developed enough and as tight to even be half as good as the first one. Never mind what this is, which is I genuinely think, a couple of small moments aside, I think this is so tedious to sit through. Like, I never want to watch it again, and I do think that it is almost Star Wars prequel bad. I think that those comparisons are very apt in a lot of ways. It's there's a few better qualities in some ways, some of the ideas we've mentioned, but for the most part, I think those comparisons are completely fair.
Yeah, the freeway scene is just the pod race scene.
Like, I don't really remember the pod race scene to know if I agree with the sentiment, but given what other people say about it,
eventually.
Yeah, but given what other people say about the pod race scene, I get what you're saying. Yeah, that's a fair, that's a fair comment. So just use the mechanics. Like, tell something. Like, if this is going to be about Neo struggling to like be this like leader or to be this like chosen one, we spend the whole movie building up that he's going to save the human race, and then we get to Zion, the second one, and immediately there's like politics and there's people debating what to do, and Neo's not even in the room having the conversation. It's still Morpheus.
Well, he's busy having sex with Trinity.
He's busy being like, hey, I saw you in Memento between the first and second movie. So it made me hot or something.
The only point to say that was to bring up a Christopher Nolan movie. Is that it?
A good movie. A much better movie than this.
Ugh, such a Nolan fan. Such a Nolan fanboy.
I think Dunkirk was good.
I love that one. Yeah. I do like the visual of the hallway with not with all the Smiths in it, with all the doors, because it kind of reminds me of like when I worked at a mall, and like you see the mall all the time, but then when you work in a mall and you go out into the back room and like to take the trash out and stuff, you're like, oh, it's just like there's this whole network of hallways and doors behind everything, and it's like, I don't know, kind of blows your mind the first time you see it.
Yeah, immortalized actually in Stranger Things season 3, which is
I haven't seen that.
Which is set largely in a mall, and the kids get Steve to sneak them into the movie theater because he works in the ice cream place, so he takes them in the back, and they go into this hallway. They go into the hallway that connects everything. And
yeah,
they sneak out of the theater.
that scene like sent me back in time to when I first experienced that. And it was like seeing a whole new world. Like, wow, seeing the inner workings of a mall. There's this whole underground back room area that us regular people don't get to see.
Think about what you felt in this first movie when Smith shows up at the subway station and Neo turns around and decides he's going to fight. Think about what you felt in that scene and what it meant for the character, and how the fire within you that you wanted to see him beat the piss out of this agent because he has it coming. Like, you felt it in your soul. In this scene, when Smith walks onto this basketball court, which, by the way, how does he even know that Neo's here specifically? This is like so like, it's far from the biggest problem in the movie, but it's just now I'm thinking about it, like, he just happens to know where he is exactly.
Maybe he was able to take over one of the birds, one of the crows.
But as soon as he walks on, and he's still calling him Mr. Anderson, and he's still like,
remember me?
I don't know what any of this says. Like, I don't know what this says. Like, Anderson was such a great villain. He represented the system. He represented everything that wanted to keep him bottled up and, like, pinned into a category and in his place. And in this movie, it's like, wait, so if you do break free of it, your old boss is going to hunt you down because he's pissed you got away from him. Is that the sentiment that we're given here with this? It does not work. Like, so some movies lend themselves to sequels because it's like, okay, you have a movie where there's a serial killer who kills a bunch of teenagers. You know what? The serial killer can do that again, and it won't in any way upset the first movie. Or you can have even something like Die Hard, where it's a bit silly that John McClane finds himself in a very similar situation, but it doesn't change anything about the enjoyment of the first film. It doesn't ruin the ending of Die Hard that it happens again in an airport.
Well, Jeremy Irons has a vengeance.
Or the third one, yes. It doesn't change, because Die Hard 5 is an absolute garbage movie. I hated that movie. Every fiber of my being is trash. But it doesn't, like, it insults the quality of the first one, but it doesn't have to, like, alter everything you feel about John McClane in that first movie to have another sequel where he's, like, shooting more bad guys. Like, it still just works because it can be terrorist situation of the week, right? It can be that, for better or worse. But The Matrix is such a tight story where just going back to that world just starts to, like, break down everything the first movie said.
Yeah, I wonder if it wasn't the Wachowskis, like, if just some super fan who is like, this is a really cool world and, like, a really unique look and style that I think we can do more with it.
I remember,
like, if someone else wanted to do that, like, if we could get something good.
Oh yeah, maybe.
Because it is, like, a cool world and with a unique style.
I mean, we don't need any more. Like, it's okay for one movie to just exist and never have a sequel. Like, that is
absolutely
perfectly okay.
And I still would prefer that.
Yeah. I do distinctly remember Joel Silver, the producer, like, and admittedly this might have always been marketing, but I remember him claiming, like, very, very intently claiming that this was always intended as a trilogy. I don't believe a word of it. But
no, I don't think so either. Although I guess we sort of have what I was saying with the Animatrix, because a lot of those are pretty good. I remember the Animatrix being okay.
Sure. That was
so I guess there is potential for, like, people to, like, play around in the sandbox and give us something good.
I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not really that interested in, like, having tons of more Matrix though, because because ultimately what makes the first movie good is not the world it creates. I mean, the world it creates is good, but that's not the appeal. The reason why it's great is because of the story it tells and the character journey and how it fits into the world that it's created.
Yeah.
This is the problem that Star Wars actually does have a lot of the time, is that people are obsessed with telling more stories in the Star Wars world, that they kind of rely on it, and it's like, yeah, but the reason why Star Wars was good is because it was the story of Luke and Han and Leia, and, like, their chemistry and the performances from those actors and the, like, that journey, and the, like, that's what made Star Wars good. It's not that they had something called a Jedi. It's not that they had Star Destroyers. It's not that they had these things. These were all just, those were the textures, the flavors they added into it to make it all cool and interesting. But that's not really what made Star Wars good. But people obsess over what the name of Han Solo's gun was because nerds are going to nerds. And that's fine. I'm not saying you can't do that, but there's a problem when it feels like the next movie is made around that idea, where that's why you're making the next movie, because you want to make more movies where we find out why he's called Solo.
Okay, well, you haven't watched that movie.
I haven't watched that movie, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to hate it.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're going to watch it like you are right now with a terrible mood and your arms folded.
Like that, I will concede it will probably be a very coherent, functional movie. But I'll probably hate the principle of what it's doing.
It's fine. It's a fine movie. It's not great, of course. For Star Wars fans, I think it's acceptable. In my eye, honestly, like there are 2 great sequels in the Star Wars saga and 1 pretty good sequel, which is Return of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about it.
Sure.
And then the rest are like, okay, let's just have fun in this sandbox. Sorry about my cat, because I'm just filling with rage right now. Just steaming. Is it coming out of my ears yet?
All right. Why don't you wrap up and rate Matrix Reloaded then? I think we're safely done.
It's funny. I think even the title of the movie is kind of silly. Like, just we're doing the Matrix Reloaded. Like, we're going to give you all the action that you liked from the first movie without any of the important parts. I don't think the movie is like a slog to watch like it was for you. I think a lot of the action is filmed really well, and some of the set pieces I do really enjoy, and a lot of the mythology that they add into it is intriguing. But the stuff that is bad is really bad, and it does make the first movie worse. So for that reason, I really wish that this doesn't exist, but it does. So if I'm just watching it as a fan-made sequel to a masterpiece, I'm going to give it a 6.
Oh, I don't know about that. Oh.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what I gave it in like 15 years ago. That's probably what I gave it 15 years ago when I was being generous. Like so much of what's wrong with Hollywood making sequels I see in this movie. And it hurts because the first one is so damn good. And it's baffling that it is the same creative team involved. I've already repeated my points enough that I don't think I need to, reiterate them here. But it's kind of a soul destroying watch. It feels a little soulless. It feels like the craft of movie making, particularly the craft of writing a movie, seems to have just been left behind somewhere, and there's just nothing. There's nothing to drive or make me care about anything that's going on in the movie, except that I'm supposed to from the first one. And that only goes so far. That genuinely only goes so far. So yes. Any points that it does get, it gets for a couple of good ideas that are not executed well, but they are there. Couple of Morpheus moments, even though I do think his character suffers a lot from the worst writing when he's making speeches. He's always trying to convince people to believe in the prophecy. Because his speech towards the end when he's convincing the teams to like stay and help them, like so Neo can get to this door, and they're sitting in the red chairs from the first film for just randomly cause. His reason is basically like, yes, you could leave, but you could also stay. And imagine if I'm right, and that the war will be over tomorrow. Isn't that worth dying for? I'm like, you've not really given us any reason to believe you in that speech. You've just kind of said, "Go on, maybe this will work. Maybe it'll work. Maybe I'm right."
Yeah.
There's not a lot there.
You don't want to be wrong, right? So.
So I think his character suffers a little bit in that, but
He definitely is not as well written as he was in the first movie. 'Cause the first movie, he's like, can't take your eyes off of him. Like every time he speaks, it's like, I mean, Laurence Fishburne should just play God.
Yeah, I think Keanu Reeves almost benefits because he's relatively, in a nice way, but he's relatively wooden. So I think he actually comes across very similar, not because the writing is on point, but just because he still delivers these lines.
He's supposed to be like, nothing affects you now. You are Superman. Which is why even when it's like the CGI fights, if you're just looking at his face, you're like, that looks like Neo. But like the coat is unbelievable. Because he's supposed to be wooden.
That's an interesting justification for the bad face, but I can see what you're saying. So yeah, I'm just trying to sum up here. I wanted to mention that speech just being kind of stupid. Yeah, so much of this I don't like. There's so much. So 3 out of 10.
Ooh, that is low.
I feel nothing during.
I mean, you've said that you hate this movie, so I get it.
Yeah, I feel nothing throughout the vast majority of the action scenes. I think almost all the new characters are just kind of tedious and underwritten and feel very thin. We have the one vain, very, very vain attempt to try and make us care about Link by having his wife worry about him for like 2 scenes, and she
gives him a necklace.
Yeah, it's very little to it.
Do you think that necklace belonged to Tanker Dozer or something? Were we supposed to remember that necklace?
No, I got it was more like a religious thing. Like she believes in this for superstitious reasons. Yeah. Obviously from a technical level, the action's bad. All the CG's bad, but fundamentally, I just think that the script is piss poor, and that there is no momentum. The pacing's horrible. And the storytelling devices that are used here are just MacGuffin 1 to MacGuffin 2 to MacGuffin 3 just because. And it shouldn't feel that way. And it does feel that way. So 3 out of 10. Yes, Gus. Yes, Gus. Quiet cat. Now you're pissing me off.
He wants to escape.
He's a house cat. He's not allowed to escape.
I know. Going out means certain death for him. Hey. Go.
All right. So there you go. That's the Matrix Reloaded. If you've made it this far into the review, then put the word or phrase. What was one of the MacGuffins? There's like several. The keymaker. Put the keymaker into the comments to let us know you've got this far. Tara's going to pose for the thumbnail, so I hit that mic out of the way, and we'll see what you do. All right, 3.
Got no plans.
3, 2, 1. Pause. Tiger claws?
It's my fighting style.
Ah, okay.
I don't know what to do for these.
Maybe I'll Photoshop my beard white, so I'll the architect. I don't have a white suit jacket, unfortunately, to put on to complete the image. But
give me Jada Pinkett Smith's eyeglasses, her sunglasses.
Okay. So there you go.
Little curly cues. The tight buns.
There is that. Next week, Tara knows what we're doing, so I'll let Tara tell you what we're doing next week.
That's right. We have a very exciting movie to announce for next week.
Do we?
Let me just pull it up on the schedule.
Tara, it's the one you picked for your birthday.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I remember. Yeah, it is my birthday. So we'll be doing the second greatest science fiction movie of all time, Mystery Science Theater 3000, the movie, which means you're getting a double because we're also going to be reviewing the classic science fiction film, This Island Earth, to celebrate both my anniversary of birth and the 25th anniversary of the film being released this year. Yay!
May is a very good month for birthdays, I'll say that.
Yes.
Yeah. So there you go. Mystery Science Theater 3000, the movie, is next week's review. I have no idea how that review is going to go or how it's going
Peter
to work.
is not thrilled about this, Chuck.
I'm not gonna say to watch it. I like Mystery Science Theater 3000. I just don't know how you review it. Like review it.
The way we review all movies.
Okay, I mean, because obviously we used to have a segment where we talked about a Mystery Science Theater episode, and it kind of faded away just because we couldn't find time. Because basically, I think it was around the time Tara started doing like 2 other things a week. It was like, okay, we don't really have time to like get together and watch a Mystery Science Theater. But
yeah, because the point of that was that Mystery Science Theater is definitely better when you watch it with other people.
Yes.
Because it's always funnier that way.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that we'll never go back to that in some form or do something with Mystery Science Theater. I think there's potential there for something at some point. But
I do own them all on DVD.
I did that, huh?
Maybe after Babylon 5, we'll do a Mystery Science Theater rewatch.
Oh, in order, like the way Cable intended.
Yeah, but Mystery Science Theater, I think, is an exceptional show for that. 'Cause you're just watching a movie. There are, I guess, some storylines that go through, but that mostly happens in like the Sci-Fi Channel years.
Yeah, but that's the interesting part of doing it in order, though, is you get to see the ebbs and flows of, okay, you know, because if you just pick them, you're just going to pick the good ones, and then we're going to be
that's absolutely what I do.
Yeah, but then you're going to be like with all the bad ones at the end, and like, we're not saying we're going to do this, by the way, right? I was not necessarily suggesting an actual review series of Mystery Science Theater.
Well, I mean, we've talked about it before.
Yeah, we've pondered the idea, and we'll probably ponder it once more when the time comes, but we shall see. We shall see. Yes. A cat is going to perish tonight.
He's so cute.
All right, that has been the Atomic Cinema Experiment. You can like and subscribe, which is very important. It helps us out a lot if you do that, so please do like and subscribe. That's how YouTube dictates success. Also, rate the podcast 5 stars with a little review on iTunes, wherever you get your podcast from. Tara, will you tell the kind people about Patreon?
Yes. If you enjoy our show and our reviews, please check out our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/MildfuzzTV, and if you donate as little as $1 per month, you will get access to bonus episodes of The Ace. What do we keep there, you say? Why, most of our B movies are there. So if you enjoy Mystery Science Theater, that's where you'll find Mystery Science Theater adjacent films and movies starring Garrett Graham, the greatest actor of all time. And if you donate $5 per month, you'll get to vote on what movies we watch once a month. Oh, God, my cat. And you'll get access to these reviews one day early, and some shows you get a week early. So please head over, check that out. Really helps us out, and we give you a bunch of stuff for it. Thank you.
Excellent. I can tell you we're struggling there. As you say that, I'm looking over at my adorable cat Garrus, who's sound asleep, just off to the left.
Gus has found food, so he's distracted now that I'm done with the pitch.
Oh dear. Okay, well there you go. That's the Atomic Cinema Experiment. That has been the Matrix Reloaded discussion. Have at it, I guess. We'll see in about a month or so for revolutions or revelations or resolutions. I always forget what the title of the third one is. Let me just confirm this before we wrap up. Revolutions. It is revolutions, just to confirm.
Because these movies spin me right round, baby, right round? Or because we're gonna revolt? Or both?
I'm pretty sure
No?
it means in the context of there been a revolution in a cultural sense, but
Well, I mean, revolution also means like how many times something cycles through, which is also relevant to the Matrix.
I suppose. Yeah, but I don't consider the 2 and 3 canon at this point. Now that I've remembered how bad this movie is, the first film is the only real one in the story, and everything that comes after is to be left. And yeah, so there you go. Thank you very much for joining us once again. It's always a pleasure. Keep watching science fiction movies and computer and salsa.
Welcome to the desert of the mind.